If your customer is not aware of the problem or the pain point, it is usually very difficult to point it out for them. But if they do, then pointing it out, pointing the pain point out is much easier. And as a result, pointing out what is the effect of that pain point on them also becomes easier too. So, by understanding the customer journey, the pain points, the situation they're in, you have an idea of the stage that you need to address through the content and through the messaging.
This is Let's Make Waves podcast. I'm your host, Rana Al-Basri Mawad, and I believe that we're all here to make waves. I created this podcast to help you build your brand by sharing with you tools, resources, and strategies to gain professional authority for better business opportunities. If you want to get unstuck, you've come to the right place. Let's get started.
We've all been there. You sit down to write social media content and you sit and stare at the screen because nothing is coming to you. So, of course, we all do this. We end up checking social media for research. We might call it inspiration. And that is what we tell ourselves. And 45 minutes go by until we kind of remember that we're supposed to be working on something. So we land up coming up with few ideas and few updates. We add them to the calendar and we call it a day. I know this happens because it happens to all of us. And this is the chaos in our mind. And there's a way to organize that chaos and to stay on top of the game. So let's back up a little bit. What is really the purpose of all of this? What's the purpose of us using social media? We need to create content, social media content that is intended for our current audience and our current followers. We also need to create content so that we can attract and grow our tribe. We need to create content so we can use it to build our authority, our reputation, our image. And of course, this is the strategy that we use on social platforms so that at one point, when we have a CTA, when we have a call to action, there is an audience to call upon to. And I'm really simplifying it here just to get the point across without a lot of complication. But it's really important to understand that we're not social media influencers. We are building a personal brand. So the aim or the purpose of being on those social media platforms is very much different from that of an influencer. So let's go back to the 45-minute rabbit hole on social media that I've mentioned earlier. You can't exactly call that a great social media strategy. And it's most likely that those rushed posts that we had to put out there because we had to write something, they won't be as engaging with our audience as we would like them to be. So the question is, what do we do? Okay. We often talk about how consistency is the key to great social media presence. You have to be consistent in order to build the trust, build the image with our audience. And being consistent is important. However, it is also very exhausting, and coming up with content is really hard if it's always on repeat, especially when you have other responsibilities and other priorities. Now, in order for you to keep your sanity and keep an engaging social media presence, you need to find an easy way to create consistent content on those social media platforms. Now, there are ways about this, and I will take you through some of the ways here on this episode today. But I would like to start from the most important point that will have the greatest impact on your strategy. And this point will make all other suggestions easier and more logical to implement. It will also impact the content ideation for your social media presence. First, I would like to talk about the importance of thinking of the customer. What does your audience need to know understand, and believe so that they will take the decision to work with you. If you're a coach, if you're a consultant, if you're a photographer, where is your customer now? At what stage are they? Do they know what is really wrong in what they're doing? Do they know why they can't reach the desired goal that they want? Do they know what is the impact of the solution that you have, of course, on their life, on their work? If your customer is not aware of the problem or the pain point, it is usually very difficult to point it out for them. But if they do, then pointing it out, pointing the pain point out is much easier. And as a result, pointing out what is the effect of that pain point on them also becomes easier too. So, by understanding the customer journey, the pain points, the situation they're in, you have an idea of the stage that you need to address through the content and through the messaging. This kind of understanding will take you to the second point, which is to create content buckets or content pillars and categorize your content. So, what does this mean? Okay, so by completing the first point, that is that I've just mentioned, the customer journey. And by understanding the pain points, you will be able to identify content categories that will help you in the content creation process. And of course, by default, it will help you in not running out of content ideas. So, content buckets are necessary to help you categorize the type of content, the type of messaging that you will share through your content. And with the help of those content buckets, you'll be able to create content that will help you in brand building, while other kinds of content might help you in connection and engagement with your audience or with your clients. There is also another type of content that will help you in your positioning as the go to expert, while other content can be used to showcase the products or services, even customer social proof. So, creating content buckets will make content creation much easier because the content ideas will come to you logically thanks to the clear understanding of your customer journey. So, let's think about it this way. Just the thought of creating 20 pieces of content might be overwhelming. But when you switch that and think about finding content ideas for five pieces of content ideas for each bucket, then it feels much more doable. The second step that I would like to mention is the importance of reusing the content. Now, I know what you're going to say. I don't want to annoy my followers by sharing the same thing over and over again. I know. But basically, you will not really annoy your followers by repeating certain key points that will move the needle for them. People consume content very differently and at their own time frame. So if the same message is reshared or reshaped into different forms, such as video, then it is in a written form, then an infographic form, for example, that is part of the content creation process. Because guess what? There's a good chance no one heard the message the first time. Because I want you to consider this. The lifespan of a post is hours. On some social media platforms like X, formerly Twitter, it is actually in minutes. And also consider the importance that some people consume the message differently, some in written form, some in visual form, some in audio form. So social media moves really quickly, and no one is really paying attention to your content as closely as you are paying attention to it. So you have to keep resharing some content just to give it a chance for it to be seen at least once. Okay. You also want to reuse your content for newer audience and newer people who are joining the platform. Your audience is consistently growing on social media, and you want your newer followers to be able to see your older posts. And if you only share it one time, you share the podcast one time or the blog post one time when it's first published, then the newer audience members who have come to follow you don't really have the opportunity to easily find that content. The third point is to think of curating the content. What I mean about that is your audience wants to feel like you value them and you're sharing helpful information from others, because it's an excellent way to show them that your feed is about the audience and not just about you selling something. So by creating valuable curated content, you'll become the trusted source of information and knowledge as an expert. So instead of your feed full of content that you are creating, you will also have curated content that is important for your audience. Now, remember, you're making your feed about them, not about you. Fourth, I would suggest is that you research what your customers usually ask about in your line of work. What are the usual questions that they have about your industry? One of the best ways to create content is to listen to what the audience wants. So, platforms such as Answer the Public, Reddit, for example, are great at helping you address common questions that are on repeat from your target audience. And it's usually about your line of expertise. So, there are also forums and groups that can serve the same purpose as, a great place to collect and to gather data and questions that are common and very repetitive from your audience. Now, this type of research will help you to better understand where does your audience stop and where do they find challenges, so that they can better understand your topic of expertise. The fifth point is to use tools that will help you save things that inspire you. Now, if you are like me and you have 18 different tabs open on your computer because you came across something online and you want to read it, you're busy. So maybe you want to share it later on with your audience, but you need to go through it first. Then I'm not alone. I'm happy about that. And second is that um, this is not a sustainable thing to have 18 tabs open, right? So there is a way for you to either have a reading system, or you can use specific tools that are designed to help you create that kind of content. Now, there are many tools out there, such as Pocket and Instapaper, and that helps you to save web pages so you can come back to them later when you are ready, when you have the time to read them, and then curate the content from there. So just, you might even open a folder called Read Later on your browser. Just save it for later. And that is a way so that when you're running out of content ideas and everything, and you blocking your time to create content, you have all those links that you can check out and decide what do you want to share with your audience, or if there's anything that will inspire you. Now, I know I've mentioned 5, but I have a bonus tip for you, and that is simply ask your followers. Sometimes the easiest way is to have the biggest impact is just to ask the followers. And there are so many tools on social media that will help you post questions, post a poll, and ask them to vote or to reply to you. Yes, it can be as simple as that sometimes, just so that you can connect better with your followers. You understand the struggles that they have, and that will inspire you to create the content that will definitely be engaging, because you're addressing something that is important to them. They told you. Now, these are just a few ways you can come up with consistent content, but really, there are endless possibilities out there. And so many different ways for you to get creative with your social media content ideas. The most important thing to remember is that you don't need to burn yourself out just trying to keep up with the social media content cycle. You won't be able to sustain it and be consistent in your content if you always feel stressed and overwhelmed at the thought of creating the content. Now, I would also suggest to begin to batch your content creation and your, you know, to block timings for your content creation. This is really efficient in terms of time management and, of course, in terms of productivity. I've talked about this before. I will mention the episode about content batching and all of that in the show notes. So make sure you check that out. But I just want you to just imagine what it could be, what you could do with your time if you decide to do content batching, how much time you would have saved. Now, with that, I will wrap up this week's episode. Thank you, as always, so much for being here. Please don't forget to connect with me on social media. I love to hear from you. And if you found this episode valuable, I really hope, please do share it. Do share this podcast with your network. And as always, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review if you can. Until next week, take care and keep making waves.